I think that's a good idea. Because I can tell you, the WarCraft story got worse and worse with every iteration of it. Which says a lot, because there were a lot of iterations. Come on. Okay, here we go.
You can have stories like this, but you can't just keep doing the same story over and over and over, because ultimately, World of Warcraft is not built on this story.
Oh, you mean, oh, there is a big bad guy and he's about to destroy or conquer the world and we have to stop him? Which we literally do since Vanilla WoW.
What is up, everybody? It has been about a week since the last time I uploaded a video here over on Nixxiom Talks, but a lot has been going on in the background. The wife may or may not be several weeks pregnant now, which I am happy to announce to you all. 2 out of 12, hoping to have a lot.
Nice. Congratulations for laying that pipe.
The kids one day. And I just was working on this brand new YouTube channel, which I launched just the other day, which is called Basically You. Anyway, let's talk about what you actually came here to hear me talk about, and that is World of Warcraft Midnight and its story, and why why it is not Warcraft. Why do so many people say that about?
The same goes with Dragonflight, or oh Jesus, how was it called? Shadowlands. The last Warcraft-like story that we had, I think, was I don't even remember how it was called. The one where Sylvanas betrayed everyone and went off into the Shadowlands. You know, Battle for Azeroth. That was it was. Yeah, I remember that one. I didn't like it at all. Played it, but didn't like it.
This particular WoW expansion. You know, there have been bad WoW expansions in the past in terms of writing. You know, the best example, of course, is Shadowlands, but I don't remember people like saying that, you know, Shadowlands was like not Warcraft. Like, people would say that Shadowlands was like a Warcraft fan fiction, but it was still Warcraft. Or maybe I'm just misremembering things, but I remember, you know, oh, this is a bad fan fiction.
I didn't play Shadowlands. I tried to play it because I couldn't level in Dragonflight because my item level was too low, so I went, yeah, guess I have to do Shadowlands. And I think I didn't even make one level before I went, yeah, I don't want to play this. This is shit. I want to leave. It was just not fun playing that. And I was already playing that. I think I didn't even play Shadowlands for an hour. And I was like, yeah, no. I'm done with this. That's how bad it felt to play for me. On top of me not liking Shadowlands, because I have seen other people play Shadowlands and I've heard how bad Shadowlands was, so I didn't want to play Shadowlands. And especially not, oh yeah, I do this just because I can't level in Dragonflight. Dragonflight? Yes, Dragonflight. How was it even called? I don't remember how. Dragon Isles? Something like that? Oh my, I completely forgot that. Oh. That's how bad both of these Dragonflight or whatever the expansion was called was. I can't even remember the name. That's how bad it was. With Shadowlands, I at least remember the name.
You know, that was the usual criticism that I remember people saying. But Midnight is kind of unique, at least in my experience of the expansion, in that people say that Midnight, it's not that it's a bad fan fiction, like it genuinely is not Warcraft. It does not have the Warcraft tone. You know, me personally, I've been, you know, vocal and a critic of.
That's not surprising. Everyone that made Warcraft is gone for years. they've all been replaced by people that don't care about Warcraft.
The story of this expansion, not the gameplay so much, but you know, I've been talking about where the storytelling has been falling flat. But you know, unless you've seen all of my talks videos, you might not necessarily know where I'm coming from when I refer to like Zul'Jin, for example, as the bad guy in, you know, the like in the current expansion. And you might not know where I'm coming from when I bring up like certain other critiques about characters and stuff and why they're sort of, you know, poorly written compared to past characters. Anyway, so I wanted this video to kind of be my like be all end all explanation as to why I think this expansion is so weak in terms of its storytelling as well. Like what I think that Blizzard is truly doing wrong. But really, when
hiring incompetent, whiny people that have no experience in life, feel like they are the victim all the time. And yes, we are going there. And how about they are generally horrible people, and they don't understand heroism because their heroes are literally people like George Floyd. You know, a crack junkie. Of course, those people can't write good stories or characters because they're trashy people. They can't even imagine a good person or a heroic person, which is, imagining a heroic person isn't even hard. It's not. You just go for the pinnacle of good and strong there.
When it comes to this video, I just want to talk about the three big things that everybody loves to talk about when it comes to Midnight. You know, it's not Warcraft anymore. The game is woke, and the story is horribly predictable, and why that is. And yeah, this is going to be a fun discussion. I'm going to be speaking from the heart, no script or anything. So I'm going to do the best I can, and I'm going to try to keep my thoughts as organized as possible while I float around the Eastern Kingdoms for you all.
Personally, I think random quests in Vanilla WoW had more heart and soul and story to it than entire expansions these days in World of Warcraft. I think the Warcraft writing team is that bad now that they can't even surpass some random quests in Vanilla WoW.
So here we go. So the first thing that I want to do is I kind of want to just talk about like storytelling techniques and how to tell like an effective and strong and relatable and interesting story. So the first thing I'm going to establish is just something very simple, and that is just simple conflict or relationship between two parties. You know, honestly, it probably would be better for me to open up MS Paint for this one. You know what? Yeah, I'm going to do it. So when it comes to a story, usually you have two different parties.
Sure.
And these people, like these two individuals or two groups.
And let me guess, they're betraying the two parties as basically the same. They just have a difference, and oh, that gets resolved, now we are best friends. Something like that.
Groups or two teams or whatever, like they usually are divided by their perspective on things, by their religion, by their background, by their traditions, by their culture, by their geography or something. But you know, there is something that divides these two parties.
Yes.
Or maybe there's 10 parties or whatever, but you know, let's just keep it simple right now. A and B. We've got this natural barrier that exists between these two. And, you know, for the sake of making it Warcraft, let's just say that A are a bunch of orcs and B are a bunch of humans. Now, bear with me here, because there's many different ways that you can use both A and B in this example.
Sure.
In terms of storytelling. So the first storytelling technique that you could do is, here we go, standard Warcraft, when A and B, for whatever reason, are forced into a conflict with one another, maybe by an outside party, or maybe tensions have just been rising over the many years. Whatever it is, A and B are forced into a conflict. A great example of this is WarCraft 1, Orcs and Humans. From history, the Iliad, you know, the battle between the Greeks and the Trojans. But we've got these two distinct groups. They are now in conflict with one another, whatever. Another kind of storytelling technique, though, is when maybe you take like an individual from A and you throw him over into B and you see what happens. Great example of this from Warcraft lore might be like when Thrall is, you know, he's taken by Blackmoor and he's raised as a gladiator in, why am I forgetting the name of the place? Durnhold? Yeah, Durnhold Keep. Another example might be Mulan. You know, she dresses as a man, she joins the military, you know, she's fighting with, you know, the Chinese and stuff, and you see what's going to happen there. Another one might be a British fighter pilot. You know, he's flying over Germany during World War II, and then he's shot down, and now suddenly he's left in B territory, and he's like, oh crap, you know, what do I do? Like, this is an interesting form of storytelling, but there's other ones too. Let's keep going. This is something I'm going to come back to here in a minute, is when this barrier that we've established is just shattered. It is broken because some outside element has come in and it has forced both A and B to work together, even though they hate each other, even though they have their differences. You know, element C, you know, this evil person has come along, and, you know, A and B have to team up to fight him. Great example of this, you're probably already thinking it off the top of your head, is maybe Warcraft 3. Horde and the Alliance team up to fight against Archimonde and stuff, against the Burn.
Why did I immediately go to the Jailer? Because that reminds me of the sky shattering in a cinematic to Shadowlands. And yes, I know, why would you go to Shadowlands? Because it was the first stupid thing that came to my mind. Which is really sad, because Warcraft 3 is way more interesting.
Burning Legion against the Scourge. Great. Another one is when maybe one party realizes that, hey, they've got a problem, or maybe they're wrong or something, and the individual or the group, they shatter the barrier, and then they go over and they join the other side. Great example of this, anybody ever seen Avatar: The Last Airbender? Zuko. You know, Zuko, he realizes, oh, hey, my quest.
The TV show, great. The movie, never watched it for good reasons.
For honor is very corrupt. My father's kind of evil. He's kind of wicked, very selfish and whatever. And so he decides to break the barrier between him and the Avatar and Team Avatar and stuff. And he actually ends up joining them.
Yep.
And then last but not least, the last one that I can think of off the top of my head is...
By the way, very interesting character arc that Zuko has. Very interesting. I think my favorite character in the entire show might be... Well, actually, it's Toph. But on basically the same first place is Uncle Zuko. Uncle Zuko? Zuko? No, that's not how he's called. Hero? I don't remember. I don't remember. The prince's uncle. The super awesome guy.
When both A and B, like, they, for whatever reason, they both together decide to shatter this barrier between them. Like, maybe like it is an outside influence of something, or maybe they just grow as characters and they decide to take down the walls and reconcile, despite the fact this wall has divided them for a long time. Something that comes to mind immediately, and the only reason why I'm thinking about it is because everybody keeps talking about the Disneyification of World of Warcraft, is maybe like Hiccup and his dad from How to Train Your Dragon. You know, they're separated in their ideologies, but then as the movie progresses and when we reach the end, you know, they kind of learn to like kind of come together and work together. And, you know, in a way, they sort of both admit in some ways that they're wrong. And anyway, they have a happy father-son relationship or whatever. Anyway, those are the only ones I can think of off the top of my head. But the point is that there's a bunch of different ways that you can have two parties or two individuals with separate ideas and whatnot interact in a story that is interesting and compelling and whatever. And all the examples that I just gave, you know, you can tell great stories with each and every one of them. Now,
sure,
World of Warcraft primarily...
Here it comes. Here the important things. I can't even think of it, but maybe because I'm a little bit brain fried today. Maybe that's case, yeah.
Was built, like the Warcraft tone was primarily built, first of all, on the whole two sides in conflict with each other. Okay? They are just too different to like find a reconciliation. The barrier, like the chasm between them is too vast. You've got this orcish, tribalistic honor culture versus, you know, the human kingdom of Stormwind, which is just kind of your standard medieval European whatever, almost like kind of Catholic culture, you know, believing in things like mercy and charity and whatever, and orcs are just all about honor and glory and Loktar Ogar and whatever. You know, you've got these huge differences between these two cultures, and they naturally clash. It don't matter if it's orcs and humans, it don't matter if it's paladins and warlocks, it don't matter if it's the Pandaren and the Mogu or whatever. The point is, you've got these dramatic chasms between different groups of people, and this is primarily what Warcraft was built on. Orcs versus humans, Horde versus Alliance, Forsaken versus Worgen, Bronzebeard dwarves versus Dark Iron dwarves, Tauren versus Centaur, Night Elves that are super freaked out because of what happened during the War of the Ancients, you know, a tragedy that sundered the world. You know, arcane magic caused that. So it's Night Elves versus like arcane users. Like, holy crap, Night Elves will never tolerate arcane use because the last time it was used recklessly, it almost blew up the entire world. So get out of here, mages. Like, you don't belong in Darnassus, okay? You're gonna blow us up. And of course, things like Blood Elves versus Amani, which I'm going to come back to this here in 1 second. Now, sometimes though, in Warcraft lore, you do have the outside element, the sea, you know, the demon or the evil guy, you know, he comes along and he forces these two groups to work together.
Which, perfect example, the entirety of Warcraft 3. Literally the entirety of the game. Well, and then you become, in one of the Undead campaigns, you become the reason why the others work together.
Temporarily for a time. That is also very common in Warcraft. Great examples. I already talked about Archimonde and the Burning Legion in Warcraft 3 with the Scourge and everything as well. You've got the Horde and the Alliance kind of working together to fight against the Lich King during Wrath. You got the Horde and the Alliance working together a little bit to face Garrosh later on in Mists of Pandaria. So Warcraft also has that too. And then very, very rarely, especially going back to like the old days of Warcraft, maybe the first 8 to 10 years of the game's lifespan, very rarely do we have a story where you have two opposing parties that, you know, for whatever reason, they look past their differences. They realize, you know, maybe they can be friends, maybe they can work something out, and maybe a friendship is built between them or a relationship or something. A great example of this from like old Warcraft lore is Tyrion and Eitrig. If you read Chris Metzen's book, I believe it was Blood and Honor, correct?
But who did? Who did? Only the most hardcore of hardcore people, which I'm not one of them.
It's kind of late at the time of me recording this, so if I got that wrong, just let me know down in the comment section below. But like, you know, Tyrion and Eitrig, when they, you know, look past their differences, a human and an orc, in the midst of like this huge racial conflict between these two groups, they become friends with each other. But this is a very rare story, and the reason why these stories need to be kind of rare, or why they were so rare back in the day, is that if World of Warcraft was absolutely impregnated with these sorts of stories, the war in Warcraft would end. You know, the Horde and the Alliance would just look past their differences and just become friends with each other. And where's the gameplay there? You know, where's the faction conflict that like addicts people and creates like all the fun in the battlegrounds and, you know, the competition between players and stuff? Like, where does that go? Anyway, we'll come back to that. So the big issue with World of Warcraft Midnight, and you can probably already see like where I'm going with this, is that Midnight dramatically has changed like how like Blizzard approaches storytelling when it comes to Azeroth and the greater world, because
because they regret calling it Warcraft because war bad. They don't want that. They want cozy, which is quite stupid for a game where you fight things. But hey, that's where the development goes. By the way, I haven't played played Midnight because I will not give that company any more money. I refuse. I don't care. Blizzard died years ago. About a decade ago. Yeah, about a decade ago. Blizzard is dead. And I don't care about the corpse. The zombie company that is Blizzard.
Rather than it being a story about, like, you know, these two groups fighting and being in conflict or whatever, you know, it seems like the primary story mode that Blizzard is concerned with in Midnight is the reconciliation story. Oh. It is the two different parties coming together and seeing past their differences, and both of them choosing to destroy the barrier between them. And this can be done. You know, sure. I said just a moment ago, all these storytelling techniques are great, but it all depends on how you do them and how often you do them. And the problem with Midnight is they're doing this very poorly, and they're doing it way too damn much. And
who could have guessed that the people that are stupid and think all people are the same, except for the people that I disagree with, they are bad, would write something like that. Who could have guessed? I'm not surprised. I'm also not surprised that it's written badly. I wouldn't expect anything else from that team at this point. I mean, look at Dragonflight and Shadowlands. Why would you expect... Oh, and The War Within. Why would you expect good writing from these people?
Most of you, when I say that, your first thought is you're going to think to the whole Blood Elf and like the Amani troll situation. But it's a lot more than that in just Midnight, if you look at it from a bird's eye perspective, that has slowly, progressively frustrated players more and more. You know, even going back to previous expansions before Midnight. So some examples. I'm going to start with like the weakest examples. I'm going to build my way up. So this is like a setting the stage example. In the very beginning of Midnight, okay, you have this conflict that is established between the light and the void. Okay, the light, you know, that's
don't tell me they went, yeah, oh yeah, we had our differences, but we are friends now. Don't tell me it went there. It went there, right? Of course it went there. Why wouldn't it go there?
It's the defenders of Azeroth and stuff. And the Void, that's these evil shadow monsters led by Xalatath that are seeking to consume the world. The light is a force of sacrifice and charity and mercy and honor and life and giving and whatever. And the Void is a force of selfishness and consumption and greed and lust for power and so on and so forth. And these two groups are in opposition with one another as we go into Midnight. So what happens? Well, right in the introduction of Midnight, this expectation of these two groups is kind of shattered in front of us, pretty much through the character of Eretor, because
of course. Exactly what I expected. Exactly.
Begins to look at the light and the way that like he's interacting with the light and the way that the light is interacting with the army of the light and like other people, his father and stuff. And he's beginning to realize that, you know, the light might be a source of goodness, but the light is kind of, you know, there is no objective morality in World of Warcraft. And so the light, you know, yeah, it can mostly be used for good, but it can also be used for evil. All right.
Like everything. Literally everything can be used for good or evil. I mean, it's not really, this is not, so wise. It's more like, oh yeah, this is dumb. This is dumb. Why would you do that?
So this is old lore, though, to be fair. This goes all the way back to classic WoW with like the Scarlet Crusade and whatnot. So this is, you know, I'm starting to build a foundation here. You guys will see where I'm going with this. But, you know, already, like, if you've got a player that's gone into this expansion with like, yeah, like I'm with the defenders of Azeroth and the light and like whatever, and we're going to kick this Void's ass. Well, now suddenly Blizzard's telling you that, well, the light can be just as bad as the void. And it's like, oh, okay, so this barrier that divides them, well, you know, we got like a tiny crack in it now, like, all right, you know, whatever. Yeah. Then later on, as the story continues, we begin to see more like void-like characters, like Alaria, for example, and oh my goodness, what's that dude's name? The void blood elf guy. Why am I blanking on his name right now? What is?
I can guarantee you, no one gives a damn. At least I don't, because I don't care about Warcraft anymore, because it's not Warcraft anymore.
The name of that one void blood elf guy from World of Warcraft Midnight that everybody thinks is gay?
Because he's gay.
Magister Umbric. There we go, Magister Umbric. So we start interacting with Alaria.
I bet everyone thinks he's gay because he's gay. Because he's written to be gay. I bet.
And, you know, Magister Umbric, and these are people that are supposed to be of the void, or, you know, so we think, you know, so they would probably be our enemy, right? But no, you know, they're on our side, you know, they're good guys. I mean, with Magister Umbric, I mean, that dude don't even struggle with the void in Midnight. Like, the void is just a simple magic system for him. He don't struggle with any sort of, you know, vice of, you know, consumption or selfishness or a desire for power. Like, he's just some guy that uses the void. But anyway.
So they retconned the void? Why would... Man, they literally destroy everything in World of Warcraft. Literally everything. Every aspect of the lore destroyed. Every character destroyed. Oh my god. This is so stupid, so dumb. If you follow the story of World of Warcraft and you're like, oh yeah, this is so awesome. Are you stupid? You have to be stupid, right? Because damn, World of Warcraft sucks now. Man, this is so gay. There are no other words. This is so gay. No thanks.
So all right, well, barrier is cracking a little bit more. So, you know, now this this division between the two, it's like, okay, we got the light over here and the void over here. Well, we're kind of just establishing that, well, the void can be good sometimes and the light can be bad sometimes. Well, we go through the void portal thing and we end up allying with a Dominar, you know, an actual like void lord guy. And okay, well,
wait, what? Oh my. Really? Oh, jeez. Yeah, that's dumb. That's really stupid. I told you before, the writers are just stupid. They're just stupid.
I guess the void, it's just a matter of perspective now. It's just relativism. So, all right, so this barrier is shattered. Okay, like if you go into World of Warcraft Midnight now, if you finish the campaign and you're like, the light is good, like the light is awesome, and we're gonna drive back the void and the void is evil. No, Blizzard is completely, like, that is not the narrative that Blizzard is presenting. And if you are going into it with like, the void is good and like the light is evil because it oppresses and because one time it made Illidan, you know, almost take power that he didn't want and stuff in that one cinematic when he yelled, I am my scars. You're also wrong, because Blizzard is establishing that this barrier doesn't exist, and like these two groups are actually just one and the same, two sides of the same coin.
Of course. Of course. Of course. Of course that's what they do, because they smart, right? They so smart, you stupid. We know better what we do. This makes way more sense, right? There is no good and evil. It's all a matter of perspective. Oh, I hate these people.
Light and void, all right? Now that's just one example, but there's more than that. Let's say that this is Magister Umbric, this is the void around him,
okay,
and these are the blood elves. In the lore, you know, going into Midnight, the Void Elves, because of their connection to the Void, you know, this incredibly selfish, dark, evil, dangerous, you know, magic system in World of Warcraft, because of their connection to it, these guys have been kicked out of Silvermoon City. You are not allowed here. But through a very short quest chain, these guys go over to the Blood Elves and they're like, hey, you know, we're Blood Elves just like you. And these guys are like, hey, yeah, you're kind of helping us with like the battle and stuff. And at the end of the day, we are all family. And so therefore you can come back into Silvermoon, okay? So this wall between, you know, the Void Elves and the Blood Elves, that separation that divided them, well, we're destroying this wall, okay?
It's funny that they write shit like that, but they would never wanna be friends with someone that supports Trump. And we all know it's true because we all have seen them, right? We have seen the photos of the employees from Blizzard when they walk out to demonstrate for, I don't know, something rights. Or to free Palestine or whatever stupid thing is going on today. We have seen them all. We know.
All right, you know, whatever, you know, no big deal. This is Varisa Windrunner, and these are the Sun Reavers and the rest of the Blood Elves of Silvermoon. Varisa Windrunner, she led the whole Purge of Dalaran thing. She has killed a ton of her own kinsmen and stuff. It's a whole thing. Point is, Varisa Windrunner and the Silver Covenant, they were exiled out of Silvermoon City. They ain't allowed to come there. But Varisa comes over to the Blood Elf people and stuff, to the Sun Reavers and everybody, and she's like, hey, we want to help against Xalatath. And at the end of the day, we are all family. And they're like, oh shit, yeah, bro, you're right. And Varisa and friends are let into Silvermoon City, and this wall between them is destroyed because now, oh, they come together and they realize that they can be friends and stuff. We've got Clothalas, these guys, the Blood Elves. And
now, I knew that all the elves are being united, as far as I remember. Maybe with the exception of the Night Elves, but I've seen a video about that weeks ago. And yeah, the way that he talks about it, yeah, it's even worse than back then, because that was just an argument for, yeah, they try to bring everything together, make it easier for basically WarCraft 2, which of course will not happen because they're making way more money with WarCraft 1, and I can guarantee you no one would come back for WarCraft 2. I don't even believe that people that play Warcraft, at least retail WoW, would go and play Warcraft 2 because they would lose all the things in Warcraft 1. Why would they go to Warcraft 2 if all their things are in Warcraft 1? They've worked for that for years, for 10, 20 years. Don't take that away from them. So Warcraft 2, I think a World of Warcraft 2 would never work. I think that game would fail massively. Maybe it would be successful in the first 2 months, and then it would die massively, just like every other live service game. Because remember, MMORPGs are just live service games. Nothing else, just live service games.
Got Zulaman over here, Blood Elves and Trolls. They've been at war with each other for generations and stuff. But then Lady Liadrin goes over there, and in the course of an afternoon, somehow, like, all this animosity between these two warring factions for generations is not completely obliterated, but so much of it is put to the side, and they realize, you know, oh, maybe we aren't so different, and maybe there really is a path to peace. We get the establishment of a character like Zul'Jin, I'll come back to him, who resists this change and stuff. Anyway, the point is, the greater Amani and Cinderai story is that this division between these groups are breaking down. And we even got the recent cinematic with the Heronir saying, hey, we all share a common ancestry. So at the end of the day, we are all family.
That's gross. They literally retcon everything. It's freaking disgusting. I hate modern WoW so much. Well, maybe not hate. I mean, I don't play it. I don't interact with it on a daily basis. Only when I watch these videos, I go, oh my god, that's so dumb. It's so dumb. Why is it so stupid? Oh, right, the writers. The people that make it, yeah. Makes sense.
So this barrier between us should not exist. We also have the example of the Dark Well becoming the Dawn Well. We have all these different elven groups. Some of them have hated each other, despised each other, or been suspicious towards one another for thousands of years. So this is more than just an A and B thing. This is like A, B, C, D, E, F, whatever. But for whatever reason, you know, all of elvendom comes to Silvermoon City. The Night Elves, and this is just one example, you know, they've been wigged out by arcane magic for over 10,000 years now, and they're looking at these Nightborn bastards, and they're looking at the Void Elves, you know, these people literally using like dark magic that's probably very much against the tenets of like druidism and the priesthood of the Loon and everything. And they're like, you know, whatever. Like, at the end of the day, we're all family. So this
just forget the hundreds of thousands of dead people. All the suffering. Yeah, sure. Yeah, but that's literally bad writing.
Conflict between them, it too is broken for the sake of family and for the sake of peace, because having these walls, these barriers that divide us is bad. Are you starting to see why people don't like this storytelling?
Yes, very much.
For whatever reason, Blizzard is just obsessed with the destruction of the barrier that separates. They are just obsessed with this one mode of storytelling, and that is two different groups that have whatever issues between them that separate them, even if it's like a chasm that separates them. And for some reason, over the course of an afternoon, they decide to put all that aside for the sake of family or for the sake of friendship, or just because whatever, I guess they're just bored of the conflict or something, and they become friends or allies, or they become at least like, we're cool with each other. You know, we're not in open hostility anymore. And when you do this over and over and over throughout the expansion, which is exactly what they've been doing, it gets so tiresome. It gets so boring, and you should not be surprised when the damn, like, community is saying, like, what the hell is this, like, World of Peacecraft? Because you literally, and you shouldn't be surprised either when, like, the community says, hey, like, this is not WarCraft. Like, you can have stories like this in WarCraft. You can, and we've had these sorts of stories in the past.
Yes, we did.
But you can't just keep doing the same story over and over and over, because ultimately World of Warcraft is not built on this story.
Yes, but the people that create modern Warcraft don't like Warcraft. I think he doesn't understand that. The people that work on Warcraft these days, especially the writers, they don't like Warcraft. They don't. They hate that thing. That's why they want to destroy it, and that's how they do it.
It's not built on two sides learning to become friends with each other. World of Warcraft is built, its foundations are built on two sides that they hate each other. Like, they despise each other because of their extreme differences. And there's more examples that I can bring up than just this that have happened in this expansion and in others. There is the Dragonflight example from Dragonflight. Like, oh, in the end, we're all just one big family, Caligos says at the end. There's the Eridar, the red-skinned Draenei, being let into, like, the Exodar and stuff because all they do is say, we're sorry. And then they're like, we're gonna help you cleanse Bloodmist Isle. And then suddenly the Draenei are like, oh yeah, you've been literally genociding and trying to wipe us out for, 10 trillion years and stuff. I've probably seen my own children drowning in their blood because of, like, the work of your hands and stuff, but you said you're sorry. So I guess we can let Eridar into like the Exodar now. You red-skinned, fell-infused Draenei that worshipped the Burning Legion for thousands of years. Come on in, brother. Like, it's like, what? Now,
Yeah.
and of course, there's going to be that one person that's like, oh, it's just mercy. It's just, bro, like there comes a point where there needs to be a little bit of justice, bro.
Yes.
A little bit of accountability. Like what? Are we going to start letting the Naga into Darnassus in the next expansion? Honestly.
You can't have stories about accountability by people that hate and can't take accountability for their own actions. You can't expect that. I think he's confused that he thinks that they're still the same writers at the game, at the company, which I know he knows that that's not true because he's that big of a WarCraft fan. I mean, he's literally making videos about WarCraft. He knows that these aren't the same people. The people that write the story of Midnight aren't the same people that wrote the story of Vanilla WoW. These people are long gone. Now there are people that are stupid, arrogant, and they hate everyone else that isn't like them. And they hate World of Warcraft. These are the people that write these stories.
Honestly, bro, if they did that, it would be on point. Dude, if a freaking next expansion, the kobolds are living in Stormwind, it would not be surprising. If freaking Ragnaros comes back in a future expansion and says, I'm sorry, and like he's living in Ironforge, heating the Great Forge, it wouldn't be mind-blowing at this point.
Yeah.
This would not be far-fetched. This would not be out of the realm of possibilities of Blizzard storytelling, because this barrier-shattering like thing that they keep doing, they just keep doing it, and they keep doing it for everyone. I could go into each and every one of the examples that I just gave and like show like how Blizzard could have done it better, but this video is going to be long enough as it is because I'm only just getting started. Because, you know, the best example though of this like, oh, family supersedes division is of course, you know, Eretor, Terrellion, and Ilaria, which this story is when Midnight first came out and like we were all first playing it, I actually really liked Eretor as a character. You can go back and watch like the OG Nixxiom Talks videos on this channel when Midnight first came out, and I'm like, man, I'm really liking Eretor. Like Eretor is a lot of fun, you know. But the thing is, I reached the end of his story and it didn't go anywhere, because here's the funny thing. Here's what Blizzard did. The Eretor and family situation. You've got Ilaria right here, and she's the Void, okay? And then you've got Eretor's dad, Terrellion, right here, okay? And he's like of the light and stuff. And Eretor, he's kind of caught in the middle, right? You know, he didn't really grow up with his parents. They were fighting with the army of the light and stuff. So he's in the middle. And, you know, he's a paladin, but he's seeing how the light can be used for evil and how the void can sometimes be used for good. And he's kind of sitting there wondering like, you know, which side do I choose? And I loved this because this like scrupulosity that he was dealing with, like, I thought this was great. It's like, oh, this is like.
To be fair, that sounds like a decently good character design. But I also have seen his hairstyle, so yeah, we know who designed him.
The dude having a question of faith. This is like a guy who he's been raised Christian his whole life. He's seeing the evils in the church for the first time, and he's seeing maybe the good that's coming out of maybe another religion or something. And he's like, whoa, and he's being challenged. And I was like, man, this is great. This is great. And you know what Blizzard does with him? Nothing.
Of course not.
In the end, he doesn't even choose a side, because choosing a side is bad. I'm about to talk about that.
Yeah.
So Eretor does nothing.
But I would have thought, yeah, why choose a side? Why not use the power of both? That would have been that was my thought the first moment we were talking about this. But I would be, yeah, I use the power of both to do good. That's where I come from. But I would guess that the writers of Blizzard do something way more stupid.
He just is like, oh, I'm really struggling with the light. Anyway, and he just goes to fighting the void. And this inner conflict that was being written around him is never answered.
Oh, Yeah,
it's never like finally revealed, like whether or
See, it's dumber than my idea.
not Erator like rejects the light and says, I'm done. I'm like, you know, of the void now, or I refuse magic altogether, the light or the void. You know, it doesn't say that he, you know, fully commits to the light and he rejects the void and its influence. Never happens, because choosing a side is bad. Choosing a side makes you the bad guy. This is the main meat of this video that I wanted to talk about, which is the bad guy, or the bad guys. The bad guys in Midnight, in this expansion, they are simply the individuals who reject the breaking of the barrier. Blizzard wants to tell a story where these barriers between two parties are just shattered for the sake of family or friendship or for the greater subjective good, you know, whatever. And there are some people in the story that they reject this either partially or completely outright. And they are framed as the bad guys.
Of course.
And these characters actually represent old WarCraft. And this is why...
Yep. I told you, these people hate WarCraft. That's why that exists. That's why they write the stories. They hate WarCraft.
So many in the community actually like these characters, or even come to their defense a little bit. Right here, all across YouTube, all across social media, on the WoW forums, on Wowhead comments, it does not matter. You guys are everywhere. Let me give you some examples. First one that comes to mind, let's begin right at the beginning. This is a big one, but it's just the Army of the Light. These guys have spent who knows how long fighting against demons and void lords and creatures that have slaughtered uncountable trillions of lives across the cosmos, okay? These guys show up to defend Azeroth against the Void Storm, the Void Invasion, and Xalatath. And Mr. GM just keeps logging in and out. What are you doing, Mr. GM? He must be gathering footage or something. Anyway, but here's the thing. The Army of the Light shows up, and they've got a very kind of radical position in Blizzard's eyes, because they are so, you know, steadfast, dedicated to the light, because they don't tolerate, you know, void users like shadow priests. They don't tolerate people like warlocks using shadow magic, and they're not willing to cooperate necessarily with people that are sympathetic towards, you know, people that summon demons or void tentacles out of the ground. You know, the Army of the Light is framed as being very bigoted, very narrow-sided. They're sort of framed as being the bad guys. You know, like they're kind of like oppressing Silvermoon, oppressing Lorthramar, like using like their moral position to take an authority that they're not supposed to have. And, you know, that's not right.
So to explain this for someone that who isn't into WoW, which no one that's not into WoW will not watch this video. So imagine the Holocaust. And now everyone is, the Nazis, they didn't do anything bad. They didn't do anything good. And then people that, you know, want to fight the Nazis come and go, they are all bad. Now the people that want to fight the Nazis are the bad guys. That's what this is. That's what this is.
Thraxian, through the course of the Midnight storyline, as he interacts more with Ilaria, as he rejects more of her position and stuff, Lothraxian, he starts to become the bad guy. Even though he was the one that just traveled across who knows how many light years to defend Azeroth. He's the one that helped us in Legion, and yet he is framed as the bad guy because he rejects this position of, oh, let's work with the Dominar. Let's work with the Void Lords.
No.
Let's show some like sympathy to like shadow priests and warlocks and people that are sympathetic towards like, you know, void users and stuff like that. He's framed as the bad guy for his narrow-minded thinking. Eventually, he even becomes a boss in a dungeon that you can kill and then loot. Because remember, I'm going back to my Erator example. Remember, in this system of storytelling that Blizzard is writing, choosing a side and rejecting the other makes you the bad guy.
Of course.
And then we have the ultimate example, you know, the big one that everybody loves.
The writers are just mentally retarded. They're just so stupid. Yes, I can. I wanted to say I can't believe that they would do that. I can. Because I know who they are. A bunch of retarded communists. Well, retarded and communist is literally the same thing. Man. Those people. I wonder why there wasn't a ban on communism. Oh, right, because they won.
Loves to talk about because everybody loves the character, and that's Zul'Jin. Zul'Jin, you know, he's been built up throughout this entire expansion so far. He is a troll, and he is looking at this barrier shattering that's happening between the Amani and the Sindarai, and he is rejecting this. He is saying no. Like, these people are our ancient enemies. These people have killed our ancestors. These people are going to abuse us and treat us terribly the second they get a chance. These people have always looked down on us. And you're telling me that you want to cooperate with these people?
Yeah.
That you want to shatter like the barrier between our two cultures and stuff? And like try to like reconcile with the people that, you know, probably put like our forefathers' heads on spikes? What the hell is wrong with you?
Exactly.
And so right from the beginning, he is framed as the bad guy. Now, keep in mind, there are other people in the story that share this perspective too. I haven't really spoken too much about these guys, which you guys have called me out on in the comment section. Like, you know, why are you only talking about Zul'Jin? Like, you know, why don't you talk about Lorthamar? Why don't you talk about the Blood Elves? Why don't you talk about the other trolls that are also, you know, sharing these perspectives? Like, no, like we can't, you know, shatter the barrier. Like, you know, we need to keep the division or whatever. You see this especially right after the end of the Haranir cinematic, where, you know, they say, oh, you know, we're all like family, we're all descended from the Haranir, you know, so we need to put aside our differences and whatever. If you go and you talk to all like the NPCs, you know, most of them are skeptical towards this. So like, no, this is not going to, you know, put an end to like all of our hatred or whatever. You know, they're sort of framed as being, dare I say, the bad guys, or not necessarily thinking correctly. But then there's Zul'Jin. And now I'm going to explain, for those that haven't picked up on it, like, why is Zul'Jin the bad guy? Because Zul'Jin, just like Lothraxion, here we go. This is also, I'm going to talk about why the story is so predictable. Blizzard believes that if you choose a side and you reject the other, that if you establish some sense of tribalism about yourself and what you believe in, that this always leads to extremism. And the only way to prevent that from happening is to destroy the barriers between A and B. That's it. Blizzard does...
Because the writers are communists. If you see that as in a different angle, then the writers are communists. They want to destroy... They want to use the game as a tool to spread their propaganda. That's the only way you can read this. There is no other, because they can't think differently. They are incapable of thinking for themselves. That's why they can't come up with anything themselves.
Does not believe that you can have one group with one perspective and one group with another that is entirely different, and they can just live separately and at peace with one another, you know, or if they are in conflict with each other, it's very mild, it happens every now and then, whatever, but maybe they are just both committed to keeping the peace, keeping order, whatever. The Army of the Light is not willing to work with, you know, people that aren't of the light and stuff. And so they become a bunch of extremists in the lore. Lothraxion, he's not willing to see past like Ilaria and her void corruption and the Dominar and how like, why are we working with agents of the void and stuff? And what does he do? He becomes an extremist to the point that he wants to blow up Silvermoon in order to stop the void. You've got Zul'Jin, who he has been the bad guy that's been built up the most in the expansion so far. You know, he is not willing to put aside his issues with the Cinderai. So what is he doing? He's turning to dark power to pretty much blow up half of the Eastern Kingdoms, as Platinum WoW once put it in my comment section down below. And this is probably the biggest issue with modern World of Warcraft writing. It's the fact that, you know, if you are pro your side, if you are pro your team, rather than, you know, being pro everyone, being pro the collectivist, this somehow makes you narrow-sided. This somehow makes you bigoted. This makes you the bad guy.
Yes, again, because they're communists. They don't. That's how they think. That's literally, you know, oh, I'm white. I'm for white people. You're a bad guy. Oh, I'm black, I'm only for black people. Now, in their mind, you're fine because, oh, poor black people, they're all retarded. That's what I think. That's, by the way, what they literally think. That's why they look down on them so much. Have you ever noticed that the people on the left, they all think that black people are incredibly stupid? All of them. And I mean that they think that all black people are stupid. And you can tell by how they behave, how they interact with black people. It's incredible.
You know, this is the bad perspective to have. Like, you shouldn't be the bad guy. You need to be the good guy that's working towards the shattering of these walls. And this is why, shockingly, why people say that the story feels so much like Disney. It's why words like Disneyification of World of Warcraft keep being said over and over and over. But this is also why people say that the modern game does not feel like World of Warcraft, because number one, choosing a side and fighting for that side's good or betterment is one of the things that this game was built upon.
Yes.
You know, back in the day when you chose the Horde or you chose the Alliance, especially if you were on a PvP server like I was, it felt like you were joining a sports team. Like you were rallying underneath a banner in this whole new world called Azeroth. But more than that though, World of Warcraft didn't just give you like, well, you know, Horde and the Alliance, you know, that choice alone. It also gave you this really diverse like roster of races to choose from, all with their own unique backgrounds and stories and motivations and whatnot. And you got to be a part of that as a player. You know, if you were a Forsaken back in the day, back during the events of Classic WoW and TBC and Wrath, like, hey, your people were forsaken by your former allies and stuff after the scourging of Lordaeron. And you have this grudge against the living and, you know, the greater living world, I should say. And it's understandable if you're an orc, like, hey man, you were just horribly treated during the events of Classic WoW by the Alliance of Lordaeron. You've recently escaped the internment camps. Thrall and you guys have just recently built Orgrimmar, and you are desperately trying to, you know, find a life for yourselves on this new continent of Kalimdor that is wild and untamed. The Kaldorei, like, they have recently emerged from their forests and now they're interacting with all of these lesser peoples. Like, you've got night elves that are thousands and thousands of years old, like sitting at negotiation tables with humans that are only like 25 or something. Like, that's kind of weird. And so you got involved in these stories as well. And not only were you fighting for the Horde, you were fighting for the Forsaken, you were fighting for the Night Elves, you were fighting for the Trolls and Vol'jin and so on and so forth. And you know what? It was cool. It was immersive. It made you feel like you were a part of something, like a greater community and communities within greater communities.
That's why I loved Vanilla WoW so much. It was awesome. It truly was awesome. And that's completely gone. Completely gone. No one, that doesn't exist anymore.
And that was awesome. And did this tribalism that exists in old Warcraft lore, did it always lead to extremism? No. Did choosing to put the Horde first over the Alliance, or the Alliance first over the Horde, or the Forsaken first over everybody else, did this sometimes lead to extremism? Yeah, it most certainly did. Of course it did, but not always, not every single time, like how Blizzard's writing it today. Yeah, you had Garrosh Hellscream. Garrosh Hellscream got to a point where he was like, you know what, like, I'm not gonna go into his whole lore backstory, but he got to the point where he was like, you know what, screw you guys, I am just here for the orcs, man. Like, I'm here for the orcs, like, they're my people, like, I understand them, they understand me, and I'm working, like, for their betterment. And, Garrosh, like, does some pretty screwed up things. You got Sylvanas during the events of Classic WoW and beyond, where she is so bitter towards the living, and the Forsaken are so bitter towards the living, they start working on a plague of undeath to turn everybody into monsters just like them, both Horde and Alliance, friends and enemies. Of course there was some extremism in, like, the tribalism that existed back in the day, but when the hell did the Kaldorei drop a mana bomb, like on Theramore? I never did that. Did the Tauren ever do something like really extreme, even though they were just chilling in Thunder Bluff and they were fighting with their allies, the Horde? No.
Well, the Taurens were the most chill out of everyone in the Horde, to be fair. They were super chill. Even compared to a lot of the Alliance. That's why I played a Tauren. For a little while.
What about the gnomes? What about the dwarves? What about the trolls? Did the trolls create a big voodoo witch doctor curse and they inflicted the Alliance with it? No. Like, choosing a side and being like, hey, I am working for this side's benefit and not necessarily that side. That doesn't automatically lead to extremism. So when Blizzard writes this same story, like, over and over, where it's like, you choosing to, fight for this side over that one rather than work out the differences or something, like, this is pretty much always gonna lead to some form of calamity. People see this, like, this impregnation of, like, collectivist morality, like, being just put right in front of their faces, and they're like, Blizzard, like, are we playing World of Warcraft here, or are you, like, lecturing me on what a good person is and what a bad person is?
Yes, that's exactly what they want to do. Because, like I said before, they are communists. They want you to fit into their criteria. They want you to obey people, obey the big people, obey the communists. They know what's good for you. Obey. Be a good slave.
It's also why people accuse the game of being woke, because they feel that Blizzard is pushing a modern day, more liberal, left-leaning ideology on them, and they're sick of it. But more than that, people are accusing the damn game of being like a damn Disney cartoon. You are dramatically simplifying all the complex storytelling that made World of Warcraft so awesome and so immersive, just for the sake of, like, doing this same story over and over again. And I want to say again, before, like, the comment is left, because it's going to be left regardless of, me saying this twice in this rant, at least I think I said it twice. Like, you can use these storytelling techniques in World of Warcraft. You can tell the story of barriers being broken down, of civilizations that previously were at war with each other or had two different ideologies that have great hostility between them, like, maybe a...
Sure, but when that is all stories that you have, and you have 10 of them, and it's all that, it's boring. It's simply boring.
Warlock and a paladin or something, the light and the void or shadow, whatever. You can do this, but ultimately two things. One, the way that you tell this story, it needs to be well written, because if you have a story, for example, where you have a necromancer of the Scourge and he is becoming friends with a former citizen of Lordaeron, like, how the heck are you gonna do that? Like,
You can't.
one man, one party is responsible for the death and destruction of this one dude's country, his people, his family, his friends. How are you going to create that reconciliation? It's possible, but my goodness, it's really hard. It's honestly why I don't think that Blizzard should have touched the Cinderai and like Amani situation. And if they did,
Yeah.
like, well, I was thinking I would make a separate video here soon talking about like maybe like what I would do different. Like if you're gonna have this reconciliation story between Cinderai and Amani, like how I would have written it.
The thing is, why would you even think about that? And I'm coming here from the point of the people in the studio at Blizzard. They don't like World of Warcraft. They don't like the game. They don't like the story. They don't like the lore. That's why they change everything. So why do you waste your time even thinking about that? How would I do that? Why? Why do you keep thinking about that? The game... World of Warcraft is dead. There's only the cheap clone of World of Warcraft, made by people that didn't create World of Warcraft, which is retail WoW. And most likely classic WoW Plus. Yeah. Oh. I wonder how disappointed people will be with that thing.
Personally, if you guys want me to make that video, you can let me know down in the comment section below, and I'll happily do a fun what if video here on Nixxiom Talks. I don't think I've ever done a video like that here on this channel before, so that'd be fun. And the other thing is that you have to, like, in order to like tell these sorts of stories over and over and over, it's like Blizzard, you're creating these like cartoon like tier evil characters. Like, in order to tell your narrative, like the Scarlet Crusade back in the day being corrupt despite being a light worshipping organization made perfect sense.
Yes.
First of all,
Sure.
Lordaeron was completely destroyed by the Scourge. Of course, that's going to lead to some extreme positions. These people are literally trying to survive amongst the ashes of a kingdom. The farms are burned. The holdfasts are burned. Like, nowhere feels safe. Like, this is a terrifying position to be in. So yeah, a little bit of extremism could brew there. You have Balnazar. He infiltrates the Scarlet Crusade. He is manipulating it from within. All that and more, like, it made sense that the Scarlet Crusade was a evil, corrupt organization because of these things that happened to it and these things that were happening within it that made it very extremist, which made it corrupt. But when you introduce the Army of the Light, for example, or Lothraxian, for example, and their only sin is they're not willing to work with the Dominar. They're not willing to work with like the Void. They don't think that it's cute that we've gone to the Void lands and we're making friends with some of like the Void entities over there. That's their only sin. This organization of mercy and justice who've traveled across the cosmos to help us, like innocents and shit, that's the only thing that they did wrong in Blizzard's eyes. And now suddenly, you know, they're walking around Silvermoon harassing citizens. It's like a bunch of Nazi brown shirts going around. Like, have you meddled with the Void recently? Lothraxians literally in the story trying to blow up Silvermoon and kill all these innocent people. And it's like, bro. Like, yeah. It's like I'm sitting there and I'm thinking back to like the Midnight introduction cinema.
It's almost like the writers are stupid. Or they want to send a message, you know, that, oh yeah, if you aren't with us, you are the enemy. It's almost like that.
When the Army of the Light shows up to save Silvermoon, and this is like a great moment. Like, yeah, like they're here, like the good guys are here to fight against evil. Like, this is so exciting, you know, Lothraxian and all these guys. And you establish them as being the good, the righteous, the noble. Like, the whatever, and now suddenly you just throw all that out the window because of this one error in their way of thinking. Now this is an organization. Oh, no, we got to be really suspicious of these guys. Like, you know, there are people, like, I remember when when Midnight came out, people are like, oh dude, Army of the Light, they're gonna be the final boss of Midnight. We're gonna fight against, you know, all the leaders of the light and stuff. And it's like, bro, come on, why the hell would Lothraxion want to blow up Silvermoon? Yeah. Why the hell is the Army of the Light walking around Silvermoon harassing innocent people? Why the hell would Zul'Jin, who's fighting for his people, suddenly want to just sacrifice a bunch of his people? Okay? Unless
what?
Blizzard is just writing the narrative that, again, the moment that you start being a little tribalistic, the thing that World of Warcraft was built on, this just leads to extremism. You're gonna abuse your people. You're gonna ruin your original cause. Any noble virtues that you once had that motivated you are gonna go.
And the funny thing is, if you're only on your side and can't see anything else, you're being an extremism written by the extremists. Remember that. These are communists. They are extremists. And it's like Asmongold said, if they would get away with it, they would kill you. And they are writing these stories. It's funny.
Out the window because you're the bad guy. Because you weren't willing to throw away that part of you that made you you and separated you from the other. Because you weren't willing to do that. Because you weren't willing to join the collective. You are the bad guy. You are not thinking correctly. And this goes for characters like Zul'Jin and Lothraxion, but it also goes for the side characters that are kind of caught a little bit in the middle, like Lorthramar and the others from the recent Heronir cinematic that came out that are sitting there going, like, you know, I don't know if I agree with this this perspective that the Heronir are putting forward. It makes the story so predictable too, because what's going to happen is the extremist is going to do something extreme. Zul'Jin is going to, you know, he's gonna, you know, harness this horrible power and he's going to use it to pretty much half blow up the Eastern Kingdoms. And all these characters that were kind of like, like they weren't really entirely sure about, like, you know, which moral path to follow. They're gonna look at Zul'Jin and they're gonna look at characters like him and be like, wow, like we can't, if we allow ourselves to be separated from one another, like Zul'Jin here, like we're just going to end up becoming more like Zul'Jin in the end. We're going to become extremists just like him. More horrendous atrocities are going to be committed, just like what we saw with this guy. Well, I guess the only like path forward is to break down the barriers and, you know, become friends, you know, world of peacecraft. And it's boring. And for the record, I hope that that doesn't happen. I really hope it doesn't. You know, I hope that Blizzard's going to pull a complete 180 here. And I hope Blizzard makes me look like a complete damn idiot. I really hope that they do. I think that WoW should go back to its roots.
That will not happen.
In my opinion. I think that Blizzard should abandon this form of storytelling that they are doing.
That will not happen because they will not allow other people to be hired that would go back. They will not allow that. Because they have control over the company, the communists, and they say what's going and what's not. I mean, of course, they have to, you know, oblige with Microsoft because they are owned by them. But still, they are like, yeah, we are communists, we do this, fuck you. And yeah, they've destroyed World of Warcraft properly, and it will not get better. Absolutely not. There's zero chances for that to happen, ever.
Doing over and over with these recent expansions, the breaking of the barriers, family, you know, whatever. Blizzard should do away with this, and Blizzard needs to lean back into the tribalism, into the conflict, into like the choose your side, choose your faction and fight for them, like kind of way of storytelling that built this game and made it so successful in the first place. And within that world of Warcraft, that, you know, whose people are divided by different gods and different magic systems and different ideologies and different planets. In fact, there are stories like Eitrig and Uther that do pop up every now and then, but they are the exception. They are not the rule. because that is Warcraft. Even the story that Blizzard keeps telling over and over, like, oh, there's this great threat and we got to unite against it or whatever. It's like, this should be the exception, not the rule. Warcraft 1 and Warcraft 2 were not like this. Warcraft 3, all the characters on all the races coming together to fight against Archimonde, that worked because it showed like how great a threat the Burning Legion was.
Yes.
But if every single expansion or every other expansion's the same damn story, there's this great threat to Azeroth and we got to stop it, otherwise Azeroth is going to blow up. Like, it just gets boring. It's dull. It's predictable. And if Blizzard continues on this path of just, you know, breaking down all the barriers, you know, World of Peacecraft, we got Naga walking around in Stormwind all of a sudden, and now we got Trogs living in Ironforge, and the dwarves and the Trogs are now good friends with each other. I mean, at some point, when does it stop being World of Warcraft? When are you just gonna...
It already stopped. It's already stopped. World of Warcraft is dead. It's just wearing the skin of World of Warcraft. I mean, literally, the UI, the standard UI of Retail WoW looks like a cheap copy of the original UI of Vanilla WoW. And I mean that. It looks horrible. It's a minimalistic thing. It does have the dragons, or whatever that is, and they look horrible. No detail on them. Completely washed out. It's just bad.
Rename it to something like Adventures in Azeroth. Anyway, so that's my rant. Hopefully I was able to give you guys, you know, a good look into my own personal issues with the storytelling today as somebody who's been playing the game for over 20 years. But also, you know, for those of you that maybe you're not playing the game right now, like maybe you understand a little bit better why many in the community are very frustrated at Blizzard and the game's modern storytelling. So I did the best that I could. I'm sure I'm going to end the recording and, you know, realize that I forgot something, but you know, whatever. It happens with every single video on this channel. But the point is just to rant, not to read off a script. But anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. And like I said, if you guys want, I'll do that video here soon where I will talk about how I think Blizzard could have done the Cinderai and Amani story better in Midnight. And we can kind of geek out with some lore theory crafting or what if lore. So that'll be a lot of fun. So anyway, that will come soon, hopefully, if you guys care to see it. Anyway, that's all.
Good video. Good video.
You can have stories like this. But
yes, you can. But they have to be well written and not everything you do with every little story piece that your world has. Then I agree with everything you said. It's just that unlike him, I have zero confidence in Blizzard doing anything that's good because of the people that work there. It's that simple. Now, if they would fire the entire writing team and replace them with a bunch of dudes that love World of Warcraft, and that would be awesome. But that will not happen. So, yeah, the game dead. Game super dead. 50-minute video. Or in my case, 1 hour 17 minutes, man. That will take a while to upload. Okay. Let me know in the comments, what do you guys think about the writing in World of Warcraft? And do you also think that, like me, that World of Warcraft is freaking dead? It's dead, and it was killed by Blizzard. It's like Asmongold said, the only company that would be able to kill World of Warcraft is Blizzard. No. The only game that could kill World of Warcraft would be World of Warcraft. Yeah. And they did. They did, absolutely. Man, fuck World of Warcraft. Thank God I stopped playing this. I hate this game. I was so addicted to this game, man. Thank God that's over. Okay. End of the video. If you like this, give it a like. If you want to see more, subscribe. See you next time. Bye bye.